I'm here with some key members of our team for our second series, How Do I Know How My Child is Doing in the Newton Public Schools? And this is jointly sponsored by the Office of Family Engagement, the Office of Teaching and Learning, and the Office of MTSS. So we're really excited. Thank you for making time to come. Welcome, hi. And we thank New TV for videotaping us because we are trying to create a Parent Academy video series that lives on our website. So if you forget anything that is said tonight and want clarification, it will eventually be posted on our website so you can reflect and review. So our intention here this evening was that since we were implementing new assessments, new ways to know how children are doing in math and English language arts and in their social emotional learning and development, we wanted to tell you about those assessments and how we use them, and to basically teach you how to ask us questions about how your child is doing. We want to partner with you in every way to make sure that your young people have a really good, strong experience here. And these new reports are brand new to many parents, and we want you to know what you have in your hands and how you can work with your child's teacher to understand how they're doing, and what you can do at home if you are interested in extending your students' learning. So with that, I just want to introduce my colleague, the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Dr. Gina Flanagan, to say hello.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nolin. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I know it's particularly hard to come at this time, but we're very happy that you're here. As Dr. Nolin kind of outlined for you tonight, our goal tonight is to give you the tools to better understand how your child is doing in Newton Public Schools. And I have to say that we've gotten a lot better in terms of the assessments and tools that we use to analyze student data and use that data to target instruction. So tonight, we've designed it really to maximize the engagement that you have to ask questions. So we're going to have one of my colleagues come up in just a minute to give you an overview. And after that 20-minute presentation, we're then going to give you an opportunity to maybe break out in some small groups to ask more personalized questions. The only thing that we ask tonight is that we can't answer any questions about your individual student. These are just very broad strokes of how these assessments are being utilized. But if you do have questions regarding your student, you can always reach out to the classroom teacher. I want to introduce some people here tonight so that you know who they are when we go into our breakout sessions. Right here is Maria Colby. She is our Director of Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, MTSS. We have our Data and Research Director, Katie Hogue, and our Director of Math for the district, Miss Jennifer Shore. So we're here throughout the night. We'll stay as long as needed to answer all your questions, but now I'm going to invite my colleague, Maria Colby, up just to give you a little bit information about the overall STAR assessment. But before I do, I just want to remind you a couple of our foundational values here in Newton Public Schools. I hope you've all seen our Thrive Promise, in which we really, our big intention is to make sure that every single student is known, challenged, and supported, and it goes right in line with our portrait of a learner. Last year, we worked collectively with the community to identify key competencies that we wanted to make sure that before the time your child leaves Newton Public Schools, that they were well versed in these various areas. And so we try to thread this in all the work that we do, including how we assess students. So without further ado, Ms. Colby.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming today, and thank you for taking time. As someone who, my 5-year-old is at home, I understand the challenge of coming to an evening event, so thank you for coming. So I'm going to start today with, like Dr. Flanagan said, just about 20 minutes of some time for an overview here, and we're going to have two main portions of this overview time. The first portion really being this question: what drives the instruction that your child receives at school? What are all those pieces that fit together within Newton Public Schools? So an overview of that before we talk about the specific reports you receive. And as Dr. Nolin mentioned, this will be posted later. And the hope at the end of this 20-minute time, then we'll have some breakout spaces or in this space. We won't need to go to a different location, but some different areas where you can ask more follow-up questions based on what you hear during these sections. So what drives the instruction your child receives? What you're seeing here on the slide is really an assessment larger ecosystem, right? Like these are many different data points that the educators use to inform what they then do in the classroom. And there's no mistake that the very first part here is on the first part on the right is the ongoing student work samples and observations, that this is the foundation, this is the core, this is what does your child do every day in the classroom? What do they put on paper? What do they share? What do teachers see in terms of your child's performance on a day-to-day basis? This is what most informs the instruction your child receives. However, there's other things that layer on top of this is truly the superpower of educators to be able to take these pieces to be able to adjust instruction. So we have those ongoing daily performance in the classroom. On top of that, we have end of unit, or what we call common assessments, and those are curriculum based. So for example, within our literacy curriculum, the first grade finishes a unit, and there's an assessment at the end of that unit to measure how effective we were at teaching those standards to students, right? So it's student performance, how did they do, but that's an end of unit common assessment. We have those at elementary for literacy, math, and for science in the younger grades right now. Then there is, in terms of assessments, there are the progress reports, and we'll talk about this as a report later, but it is an important measure for our teachers to reflect twice a year on how your child is doing against state standards for their grade. If they're in 4th grade, in the middle of the year and the end of the year, how is your child performing on a daily basis in the classroom on those standards? So those progress reports are an important piece. Then, as Dr. Nolin alluded to, and Dr. Flanagan, we are using the STAR assessments for our universal screeners. That means something all students take 2 times a year if you're a kindergarten student, 3 times if you're in grades 1 through 5. And those assessments are taken on the computer, and students all across the nation also take this same assessment. Then, as you continue on here, the layers go on and up. You have the MCAS assessments for students in grades 3 through 5. So all these assessment points come together to give signals to the teacher, right? Like what's working, what isn't, how do I adjust instruction to make sure all students are progressing the way we want them to. So what is the purpose of each of these? This is just kind of a quick summary perhaps of each. So for those daily ongoing work samples, the purpose of those is it's evidence of learning in progress. So teachers can see really quickly, I just taught this, learning in progress, what can I notice? Then for an end of unit assessments, those are checks for understanding of what was recently taught. So if the end of a foundations, our phonics curriculum at the end of that unit, and students are assessed on that, how did we do? Do I need to go back and teach? How are students doing against that? Recently taught skills. The progress reports are those summaries of progress towards the standards for the grade level. And then those universal screeners, whether we're using STAR or any other universal screener, it's a snapshot of skills and growth compared to peers. And then MCAS is that big picture measure of state performance on grade level standards. How often do these occur? Again, that anchor, those ongoing work samples, what happens every day in the classroom, that's daily, that's weekly, that's happening all the time. Those end of unit assessments for elementary happen like 1 to 2 months per subject area. It just depends on the length of the unit, but those are happening regularly. Those progress report 2 times, reflection is twice a year. The STAR universal screeners are 2 or 3 times a year. And then the MCAS assessment is that 1 time a year for your grade level. And so before shifting out of this section into the reports, just want to take a moment to speak to that Newton Public Schools is deeply committed to strengthening the SEL data points we have at elementary. Right now, we have our Newton developed connectedness survey that all students take starting in grade 3. But that information is something a school leader can look at. We can look at the district level, but it's trends because it's an anonymous survey. So it doesn't help us with those more student level, how are we adjusting our instruction to help students, right? It's helpful for us. We're very happy we that we collect this information, but it's more for us to look at trends across the district instead of actionable what's going to inform a shift in the classroom. So you received information not too long ago on this, probably about 2 weeks ago or so. We are utilizing this year something called the My Sabers. This is a very nationally, it's used nationally. It's a well-vetted assessment tool that asks students starting in grade 2 to self-reflect on their own social, academic, and social emotional skills within the classroom. So this is a reflection that they complete as, again, one data point. It's not the only one, of course, we look at in this domain, but as one data point to help us make more student-centered decisions when we're thinking about our students in the elementary grade level. Starting in the middle school, there are 2 other social emotional learning screeners that are used that are specific to middle school. Okay, so we're going to take a pause here. So again, these 5 buckets, if that's one way you could think of this, of assessment points that tell the story of student growth. We're going to do a little turn and talk. So this is something your young people do every day in our classroom. So this is something with someone sitting near you, with a partner. Just take a moment to reflect what was new information that you heard from this and what's something you're wondering about. Let's just take a minute to just reflect before we go into thinking about the reports. And we'll come together in like 2 minutes. Great question. Yep. So the My Sabers, great question. This is new. We haven't done this before, right? This is new for us. So this will be the first administration will be in after February break, so and into March here. So this is so it is new, and it takes 2 to 3 minutes for students to complete. It's very quick, but it does break down their responses in a really action-oriented way for educators, so like social, academic, and emotional. It's not a mental health screener. It's not risking for those high-risk behaviors that we start assessing for in middle school. So that's not the function. It really is for students to reflect on their skills related to social and emotional learning within the classroom, and also so families and educators can see social emotional learning data points next to academic ones within the same platform. So yeah, thank you. All right, well, thank you for that. So that's really the first part here, is a bit of what are those data points that drive our instruction in the classroom in Newton Public Schools. Now what I'm going to shift to is an overview of the 4, really 3, but maybe 4, reports that elementary families receive throughout the school year. So what information comes home to you? We have progress reports that come home twice a year. We have an MCAS report that only families receive when their child's in grade 4 and 5, because that comes the year after the students take, right? You receive STAR assessment reports 2 or 3 times a year, and you may receive an early literacy screening letter, and I'll explain what that is. So what I'm going to do here is just briefly talk through each of these reports. And as you're listening, you can be thinking, okay, what do I want to hear more about? Because once you hear the overview of these 4 reports, then you'll have an opportunity to dig deeper with those reports with my colleagues here and I. Okay, so progress reports. The progress report answers the question, how is my student doing with the state standards for their grade level in the beginning, in the middle of the year, and at the end of the year. So these are prepared by the general educators and shared with caregivers in January and in June, and there are categories which include many different learning standards. So it'll say foundational skills, and then there's additional standards that are captured within that, that educators are asked to reflect on, to give a number, 1 through 4, or not applicable if it doesn't happen too often, but there's in some of the subject areas, if a unit has not been taught yet, you might see a not applicable. The important piece with this reporting system is that this is around progress to those state standards, and it's not comparative. It's not comparing one student to another student Other assessments will do that. You'll hear about STAR, that will assessments, the universal screeners will do that, but the progress reports, it's a reflection of, for that child, their mastery of the state standards for their grade level in January and in June. And educators assign that 1 through 4 rating at those 2 points of the year. For MCAS reports, this report answers the question, how is my child doing compared to grade level standards in Massachusetts? A really similar question, if you notice, right? What's the difference? The difference is, this is very much a summative assessment, meaning it's really designed to capture the overall performance of a school year. So to capture what did a student learn in that subject area across the whole year. This report comes from the Department of Education, right, from DESE, and there's a lot of information there around how your child answered on individual questions, as well as like groups of questions. So that is how that report is broken down. And if you want to hear more about that, we can go into that next here in a minute. All right, I'm going to stay on this slide for a second because this is important for us, because these are the benchmark categories for MCAS, but also for the STAR reports. So it's the same. So based on the MCAS score your child receives, they are placed into not meeting expectations, partially meeting expectations, or exceeding expectations. And the definitions are here, what that means, which is essentially, if you think about not meeting expectations, that's saying in this subject area that they took the assessment in, right? So that is what those categories are, and those categories stay the same when we look to STAR reports. So STAR reports answer the question, how is my child doing academically compared to students in Massachusetts, but also the United States as a whole, because this is an assessment used nationwide, used across our country. There are states that use this, for example, in place of MCAS testing. So students take STAR Math in grades K through 9. They take STAR Reading starting in grade 3, and STAR Early Literacy in K to 2. Your child may take STAR Reading earlier than grade 3 if they reach a certain score that is set by Renaissance that indicates, okay, this student is a likely fluent reader and can transition to STAR Reading. But that is what the assessments are, and these are truly formative, which means they are made to, the design of the test is to inform the instruction your child receives, so that yes, we have the score, and then your child's teachers can take the information and adjust their instruction based on this measure, and to look at growth over time. All right, so this is the last part of me talking before we go into the time for you to hear more about these reports. There are 4 scores I'm going to tell you about here for STAR, 4 scores. The first one is like our home. It's like our home base. All roads come from this score. So that scaled score at the top of your report, it says 930 on this report, that is your score. And that is your child's score. And that is determined from, there's 2 parts to that score. It's the difficulty of questions they answered and how accurate they were. Because this test adjusts to your child. So as they answer questions correctly, bumps them up. As they answer questions incorrectly, it may bump them down in terms of the grade level standards that they're being asked about. So that score, difficulty of questions, and their accuracy. So that together makes the home score. That is like everything else we're going to talk about here comes from that score. So that 930, that's the score. But it doesn't mean anything, just 930, right? Like 930, okay. All the other scores make meaning of that home number, right? So the first one, making, that's made of that score, is percentile rank. So in this example, the percentile rank is 37%. So what that means is compared to students across the United States in your child's same grade, they scored better than 37% of those students. If your child got an 82 percentile rank, they scored better in your child's in 5th grade. They scored better than 5th grade students that took the STAR assessment at that time across the country, 82% of students that did that. If your child has a percentile rank of 52, they scored better than 52% of students across the country that took the score in the same grade at that same time. So that is, for a teacher, not the most actionable data point, right? Like it's good to know. Doesn't inform us of what learning target to do next or anything like that, but it is an important measure of how a student is doing compared to their academic peers, their grade level peers across the country. All right, 2 more scores here. This is the growth score, and this is so important because we believe that every single student, no matter what your starting place was, should be in that high growth category. So just to explain what that means. The growth percentile, it's called, and we talk a lot SGP during here when we're having our data meetings and talking in teacher meetings. Student growth percentile is what that means, and that compares a student's growth to that of their academic grade level peers, again nationwide. So, and it's based on how they did in the fall, and then how they just did in January when they took the assessment. So this happens to be a lower growth percentile, 19. And so this is telling us they scored better than 19%, a low number, of the students that got their same score in the fall, of the grade level students that got the same score in the fall. So we want, looking at that, we want to look in that typical high growth range. So typical is we look 40 to 60, and we certainly expect that, but we want above 60% growth for all students, no matter where you start. And then this is where you get to see something you've seen before. Those are those very familiar benchmark categories, right? So not meeting, partially meeting, meeting, exceeding. Same language, same meaning. Those are listed right below the score. So it says, so this example, partially meeting expectations. So the same that are on the MCAS reports there. All right, the very last thing on STAR reports, the very bottom of your report here has something, they're called learning areas, and they're what they're called domain scores. These are standards, the state standard domain scores. These are a little confusing, but when you step back and look at them, it does make a lot of sense. So let's think here. So this is an example. That, it looks orange there, but those are red circles there. This is a math report. So let's think, what do these red, yellow, green colors mean at the bottom of a report? So it's beginning mastery. So like they've mastered the standards of this area. They're really confident in it. Developing, 60 to 90 or 79%, and then 80 above is secure. Like they've got this domain area, they've got it. They totally understand measurement and data or geometry, right? Let's think about your fall report, for example. It's September, your child just took the STAR assessment, they're in 4th grade. These are 4th grade standards. What color do we think we would expect on your report in September? Red. Exactly. Why do you think? Do you mind saying? Yeah, exactly. They've been in school for 3 weeks. We wouldn't expect mastery of 4th grade standards. They've been in school for 3 weeks, right? So what this does for us, as you get 3 reports in the school year, because you get a September, you get a January, you get a June, what is the movement of this over the school year? So in the beginning, we expect red, because it's the beginning of the year. We're just starting to teach grade level standards for your child's grade. Then, as we reach this reporting period, January, we want to see more yellow, or at least be moving up those percentile ranges into the 40s, 50s, something like that. But really, by the end of the year, in that May-June report, we want to see those be green, right? Because that means it's the end of 4th grade. We want to see mastery by the end of 4th grade. All right, so that is STAR. The very last piece here before we have some choice to look to think more as you're processing this information is there is potentially, you may receive this, you may not, an early literacy screening letter. And the reason to share this after STAR is because what this letter is it is shared, it is a early warning system that the state requires to ensure that students that are presenting with reading difficulties in grades K through 3 are identified early, receive support, and then are closely monitored. So you notice on this letter, STAR reading is the main data point here. So the state sets what we have to use for this letter. We use the STAR reading, and then there's some 1-minute skill assessments we also have to give in every grade level, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, on more discrete literacy foundational skills. And it's those scores in combination with STAR that identify students that receive this letter. What this letter means is it notifies families that it's this exact language is from the state, that your child will receive differentiated or supplementary evidence-based reading instruction. Every child gets evidence-based reading instruction in Newton Public Schools. But that by being elevated in this threshold, that students will receive further differentiated or supplementary evidence-based reading instruction, and that will be closely monitored and adjusted as needed. All right, so when do you get these? You receive your first STAR assessment end of September, beginning October, the MCAS report in beginning of October generally for when your child's in grades 4 and 5. And then in January and June, you receive the progress reports and the STAR assessment reports together. The early literacy letters would also come with the STAR assessments if they would be posted at the same time, so you couldn't miss it. It would be right there. And then for our kindergarten students, it's just because they, of course, don't have MCAS, and they have an adjusted schedule of when they take the STAR assessments. It's November, January, March, June, alternating. So STAR is November and March, and the progress report frequency is the same. It's January and it's June. All right, so that's a lot to go over in those reports. So now really we're going to close this overview portion time, and I'll take off the mic here and we'll say goodbye to the video here in a minute, but then you'll have a choice of, do you want to learn more about the progress reports, or what do you have a question about, or just want to talk more about? And even if you don't have a fully formed question, that's okay too. If you just want to chat or hear, repeat back what you heard, that's great too. So around progress reports, STAR assessments, the MCAS reports, or if you want to hear more about the early literacy letter, that is of course wonderful as well. So what we'll do here is I'll introduce my colleagues again. We have Gina will be taking progress reports, so find a corner, maybe Gina. She'll be over there. MCAS reports are, you cannot be stumped on a question, I'm sure. There's no way here with Dr. Hogue here. And then Jen and I will do STAR reports and the early literacy letter because they're connected. So Jen and I will be together. So maybe we'll go on the section there. So really this is a time for you to ask questions, chat more. If you're all set, that's okay too. But certainly please stay if you have questions and want to keep chatting. And we really just want to thank you for your engagement and time. So thank you so much.